Hey there, friends. I am giddy with excitement to announce that I am making space for podcasting again. This fall, 2024, I'll be releasing a new season of my Global Glory Chasers podcast with a focus on food, books, and travel. So join us for an adventure feasting on the glory of God. I'm hosting conversations with artists, chefs, authors, teachers, and others about food, books, and travel and faith. And if you're interested in seeing the Imago Dei in the people and cultures around the world, these conversations will guide and inspire you, maybe even equip you for sharing with others. So subscribe today on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss any of the episodes, and they will be dropping on Wednesdays. And without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce my guests for today, two of my favorite people on the planet, my husband, Sean Young, and my oldest daughter, Melanie Gilmore-Young. And today we're going to unpack the details of our recent trip to the Paris Olympics and why family travel is a priority for us and why travel is a priority for us. So welcome, Melanie and Sean.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yes, very excited. Back to the podcast. So I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves a little bit more. Sean, why don't you start us off and tell our audience a little bit about your day job, your hobbies, maybe your dad life?
Sure. My name is Sean Young. I am I'm the father of three beautiful daughters, the husband of our podcast host, Dorina, Gilmore-Young. By day, I work for an investment management firm as a financial advisor, helping people grow their wealth, plan for retirement, and do a little bit of financial planning, as well as I also coach cross country and track for Fresno Christian High School, and also help out with elementary and middle school teams as well.
Awesome. Okay, how about you, May? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Melanie Gilmore-Young. I'm 18 years old, and I recently graduated from high school and will be heading to college in a few days, actually. I really enjoy reading and listening to music and watching movies, and I am going to be studying history in the fall.
Love it. Okay, so she's my oldest girl. I have two other daughters who are 12 and 15, and Melanie as a young adult, now 18, getting ready to go off to university. And I thought it would be fun to include her in this conversation today because she really has grown up in our family and gotten to probably benefit and live within this value the most of how much we care about travel and learning about cultures of the world. I want to start by talking a little bit about our multiracial heritage. And maybe, Sean, you can start us off by telling a little bit about your cultural background and where you grew up.
Sure. Yeah, well, I was born and raised in Fresno, California, in the heart of the Central Valley in California. And my cultural background is actually Chinese. So both my parents are Chinese, although my mom was actually raised in a foster home by an Irish family. So, she didn't necessarily have as much exposure to Chinese culture, at least when she was young, as maybe most Chinese families would have. So, anyways, our family was Chinese. We did have, looking back on it, I guess we did have a lot of Chinese traditions incorporated into our families, even though at the time, and for many years, I would refute that. But, actually over the last, I'd say a few years, I guess we did have quite a few Chinese traditions and cultural influences that maybe other families didn't have.
Well, Sean and I got married 8 years ago, joined our families together, and our family was already multiracial. So just sharing a little bit about our family background. My parents are Filipino and Italian American, mostly Filipino. My dad's a little bit Polynesian and Chinese as well. And so I grew up in a very multicultural family with an awareness of that. And I would say my identity growing up was definitely multicultural, multiracial. That was something my parents were intentional in teaching me about. And then I want to also mention Melanie's dad, Eric Lee, who is in heaven tonight or today. But do you want to share, May, a little bit about your dad's cultural heritage?
He was Scottish and Armenian. And so we get that from his side.
So my girls also have this Scottish and Armenian side. So we've got this amazing, crazy blend of Filipino and Chinese and Polynesian and Scottish and Armenian and Italian, and probably a few other little percentages of things in there. But I think part of that heritage also is that we have raised our kids, both Eric Lee and I raised our kids this way. And then after he passed away, Sean and I have continued in this tradition of making culture something that is important to us. And part of the way that we explore culture and the way that we explore God's glory is through travel. And we just went on an epic trip that we want to talk about a little bit here on the podcast. And we got to experience being global glory chasers in a different country with all 5 of us. And I wonder maybe if Sean, you want to start us off about why we wanted to go to the Paris Olympic Games with our entire family.
Sure. Growing up watching the Olympics on TV, it's just something that, I've dreamt about. I originally, the goal was to become an Olympic athlete and qualify, but my athletic ceiling wasn't nearly as high as to make the U.S. Olympic Team USA track and field team. That wasn't even, that definitely wasn't in the cards for my life. But, I figured being inspired by the 1984 Olympics, which were held in Los Angeles, with Carl Lewis dominating in the sprints and the long jump back then, watching him, and then the 1988 Olympics, I believe that was in Seoul, and the 1992, and every 4 years, these huge Olympic Games would come around that I would watch, religiously on TV, and just was enthralled by track and field, and eventually started to run track and cross country in high school and some in college as well. It just, running became a passion for me. And so this trip to go to Paris, I figured, this is a once in a lifetime trip. It's you only live once, a YOLO trip. I decided, let's just do it. It's been a dream of mine. Let's go accomplish and check that box off, and to make it to the Olympics, watch some Olympic track and field, watch some gold medals being earned out on the oval.
I'll add to that too, that we were brainstorming something that we could do to celebrate Sean's 50th birthday a couple of years ago. And he really wasn't into having like a big fat birthday party. And he kind of floated the idea of like, let's do a trip. And so got in the conversation and said, well, what about, what if we did the Olympics as your birthday? And also knowing that Milani was going to be graduating from high school. And so this would be the summer after her high school graduation, before her college career would start. And we wanted to do something together to make memories as a family. And so that's some of the reason of why we wanted to take this crazy epic trip. But then there's all of the planning, figuring out what events we're going to go to, where we're going to stay, how to get the tickets, all of that. And so that's a whole different piece, and probably a different episode that we could talk about planning travel. But I will just say that Milani was a big part of helping. She likes to plan travel. Sean was on the plane tickets looking for that. And I was looking for our accommodations. Like, we decided to use Airbnb and VRBO. And we stayed in a hotel for one night. But we were starting, what do you think? Was it like a year in advance?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
That we started.
Yeah, definitely a little over a year in advance, at least, where we actually started to take some steps towards actually booking. Booking
and
things for the trip.
actually, the Olympics tickets, we had to purchase a year in advance. So the way it worked, a lot of people have asked me this question, like, how did you get these tickets? Basically, the official website for the Olympics, they have a place where you can sign up, and you can even do this for the 2028 Olympics in LA. Now, if you want, you put your name and your cell phone number in there, your social security. No, not your social security. I'm just kidding. But you put in your name and your email, and then they email when the different types of tickets go on sale, the ones that you're interested in. So I put in that I was interested in athletics, which is track and field. And then we got the email last summer, and that was when we quickly had to purchase what we were interested in. So, Sean, why don't you share a little bit about the events that we decided to attend and why we chose those ones?
Yeah. At the Olympics, there are preliminary rounds and also final rounds. Usually the preliminary rounds, those which qualify for the finals, and the finals are where they actually hand out the medals. That's where medals are earned. And usually there's a morning session and an evening session for each of the track days. And the morning sessions are all the qualifying rounds, which are, those are fun and fantastic to watch, but the weightier, meatier events are at night. So we were definitely looking for evening tickets. Those tickets are definitely more expensive than the morning sessions, but I figured, heck, we're at the Olympics. Let's just go all out. And we ended up going to the last 3 nights of the track and field sessions, 3 evening sessions. Because why? Because most of the qualifying rounds are already over, and those are predominantly just all finals throughout the night. Semifinals, but particularly, and finals. And particularly on the last night, it was strictly just finals. Every event we saw was a final because all the qualifying was done. And also, we wanted to be in Paris for the marathon. I wanted to see the men's marathon. I was hopeful at the time when we booked our trip and selected those dates that our local marathon professional, CJ Albertson, would qualify for the Olympic marathon team. He just missed it actually by 10 seconds, unfortunately. So he didn't actually get to compete, but I was hoping that we can watch him on the roads. Paris. They were there for 3 nights of track sessions, as well as the men's marathon.
Yeah, and I think we already shared a little bit about this, but we are a track and field family, so we did focus on that. Sean and I have been coaching track and field and cross country for 20 years together and separately, and he's also been coaching elementary, middle school, and he's done some coaching of triathletes, Ironman triathletes as well. And so we really love watching the running, jumping, and throwing events, partly because we coach it, partly because we're athletes. All 3 of our daughters have participated in track and field, so that's why it was such a big deal. There certainly were other events and sports that we were interested in. Like Melania was kind of interested in a soccer game, right? Why couldn't we go to the soccer game though?
It was the championship soccer game was the same night as the champion or the finals night for track. So they we couldn't go to both.
Yeah, so that was a hard decision. We also are a soccer family. Our youngest is playing soccer now, and I used to play soccer too, and May is a big fan. But we decided we're going to focus on track and field, and then we're going to use those other days as an opportunity for us to explore the country, get to tour in Paris, see some of the sites, and, also just get to know the culture and the food as well. So let's talk about our highlights of actually watching the Olympics. Sean, what was your highlight?
The highlight that stands out to me is watching Sydney McLaughlin crush the world record, her own world record in the women's 400 hurdles. I mean, that's outstanding. To be in the room when it happened, to steal a line from Hamilton, to be in the room when it happened, when the fastest time ever posted in the women's 400 hurdles of all time on any track under any conditions. I mean, that's outstanding. That's definitely will live, in my memory bank for a very, very long time.
Absolutely. It was epic to see her. She's probably my all-time favorite athlete. When I was younger, I used to always watch the Olympics, and so I loved watching like Jackie Joyner-Kersee and some of the others, but I would say probably my all-time favorite athlete. And for me, being a former hurdler and a hurdle coach, I think the highlight was that we got to see all 4 of the hurdle races. So we got to see the 110 hurdles and 400 hurdles for the women and for the men. And the U.S. got medals in all of them. And like Sean said,
yeah, they won gold.
Broke the record, her own record, the world record. But just to be there in the stadium with 80,000 people watching that happen. There's one thing to watch it on TV. And actually the coverage on TV is pretty amazing. So
It is.
I'm not throwing shade on that, but to
Yep.
be in that stadium was unbelievable to just watch her. And we were actually sitting in different parts of the stadium because we couldn't have all five of us in the same, we couldn't buy tickets all together, but we got to see it. We were together, right, Milani? Thursday night, was it?
No, Thursday night our tickets were like only like 2 rows away from each other, so we got to be
Right.
close together on that night, which was really
Right.
nice. That's great.
Yeah. But the stadium was electric. I mean, with, nearly 80,000 people, the stands are packed. The atmosphere was absolutely electric. I mean, there's no other word to describe it. I mean, it was rocking, particularly when any French athlete was introduced, because we're in Paris.
Yeah.
Oh, it was deafening. The roar of the crowd was deafening for any home country, home country French athletes. But to feel that in a track and field, at a track and field meet is absolutely amazing.
But the thing that was cool too, and I think it wasn't, of course, there was a lot of French fans there, but we also met so many people from around the
Yep.
world that were there. And I think just that experience too of just, I had a moment where I was sitting in the stands and I could hear I think I counted like 6 different languages just like right around us where we're sitting. And what a beautiful thing it was because, yeah, we were competing against each other, the different countries, but we were also cheering for the athletes from different countries. And we were celebrating the victories that were happening. How about for you, May? Was there something that was a highlight of the time that we actually got to watch the Olympics?
My highlight was definitely watching Tara Davis-Whittle win the long jump. That was amazing. And I did long jump in high school, and she's like one of my favorite athletes. So it was really cool to watch her like compete and win the gold medal for the US. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was really fun too because we even got to see like her celebrate afterwards and run over to her husband and jump in his arms. And, there's lots of coverage of them as a couple, but just again, to be in the room where it happened or the stadium where it happened.
Yeah, it was really amazing.
That's so cool. Well, one of the things too I wanted to talk about is the city of Paris. I mean, it's unprecedented. It's the city of love, so many iconic places to visit. Now, Melanie, you have been to Paris before, and wonder if you could share a little bit about the city this time, what you experienced. I mean, was it similar to what you experienced last time 2 years ago when we went for your student trip, or was it different?
It was like similar in a general sense, but I felt like because the Olympics were going on, everyone who was there, pretty much everyone was there for the Olympics, and there was just this very like this atmosphere of like excitement and like community, and everyone was just like excited to be there and like supporting each other. And the last time I went 2 years ago was very like the atmosphere was just like everyone was just going about their daily lives, and it wasn't like, oh, you'd meet someone on the train and they'd talk to you and like things like that. It was just very like everyone was like sticking to themselves. But this time around, like we would be on the subway and people would start talking to us, and like there was volunteers everywhere helping people get around, and it felt very safe, and like you didn't have to worry like you didn't know where to go and stuff like that, which was really nice.
Yeah, when we went 2 years ago, we were part of a student like education trip. And so we got to see a lot of the country. We were in both France and England. But yeah, there was a definite different vibe. We took the metro, we took the subway both times. And I feel like 2 years ago, there was definitely just like everyone out for themselves, like the busyness of the big city, like if you were in New York or San Francisco. And that's not how it felt in Paris this time. It's like I remember we were talking to these guys who were there from Spain, and we just like they just struck up a conversation with us, and we started talking about the Olympics, and we met a German couple that was staying at the Airbnb next door to us. And so we ended up walking to the stadium with them because they didn't know how to get there. And I don't know, there's probably some other highlights that you guys remember too. Now, Sean, this was your first time in Paris. What are some impressions that you had?
Oh, I thought it was a wonderful city. I mean, I thought it was gorgeous. I just loved. I loved our time when we went out for that run along the Seine River, passing by a bunch of iconic sites such as the Louvre, and being able to see the Eiffel Tower and the Concorde, and just all the Olympic venues as well. I mean, I thought that I thought that the people there, I mean, most of them, or many of them were there for the Olympics, and it was just big time of celebration. I just felt like there's this spirit of celebratory spirit just over the entire city, and people were friendly and helpful. That's not always, that's not the stereotypical, I guess, vision that I had of Paris and Parisians in my head going into it, because, I have this going into it, I have this stereotype that, Parisians just think of us as, I don't know, ugly Americans who are coming to invade their town or something. But that definitely wasn't the case. They were so warm and welcoming.
Even when we went 2 years ago, that we did feel welcomed. It was just a little different vibe, and it was an international vibe. There were people from all over the world there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll share that one of my highlights, beyond getting to see Olympic Games and getting to see the track and field events, the athletics events specifically, was being able to taste the French food, because I'm a foodie. And one of the fun things that I got to choose for our family is that we did a cooking class. So we used the travel service Viator, and we found a local cooking class that was taught by a chef. His name was Chef Dominique, and he invited us into his home. So the 5 of us, and then there was another couple and their sister, so 3 of them, so 8 of us total. We took this 4-hour cooking class, and we got to learn all about French cuisine. He had ingredients from a local market that was just down the street. We made a kind of a provincial veal stew, and we learned all about the 5 cheese families, and you tasted cheese and had a little charcuterie with champagne and this watermelon feta salad, which we've already tried making at home. It's pretty simple actually to make. It was so delicious. And then what was our dessert? It was a clafouti, which is it was made with these plums, these tiny little plums called Mirabelle, that they have in France, and then with like a batter, almost like a pancake batter that puffs up around it, or like a cobbler. So that experience of being able to cook with a French chef, and he was so welcoming and just telling us about the city, telling us where the ingredients were from, and very just like proud of his culture and excited to be able to share that with us, in addition to us learning some techniques of cooking. That was definitely, outside of watching the games, that was my highlight. So let's talk a little bit about, why is travel a priority for our family? Sean, what would you say? Like, why do we make room for travel in our budget? I mean, in some ways, travel can be expensive. It means we need to make hard choices. Why do you think it's important?
Travel is important because it allows you to experience just different cultures, get to meet people who may have different perspectives, different traditions, and it takes you out of your, whatever bubble you're in, and just gives you a larger worldview. And I think that that's a critical reason why we travel.
So just to piggyback on that, Melanie, how about for you? I mean, you have grown up going to different places, living in a different country with me. Why is travel just important to you or special to your heart?
I think travel is really important, especially for like kids and teenagers, because it helps them learn more about the world that they live in. It kind of like, you can step away from your comfort zone and your little bubble that you live in and see how other people live their lives and the things they eat and their daily like schedules and stuff like that. That's different than from what you do. And that's really important for kids to see, because it helps them grow and learn that there's more to the world than just their little city or town that they live in. And I think it's a very valuable learning experience. And if you have the opportunity to travel or the means to, like, definitely like take that opportunity or make those like choices to be able to save for a trip, because it's a really awesome experience.
Yeah, and I think about how you grew up. When you were younger, your dad and I were working at a nonprofit in the country of Haiti. So you grew up in a developing country, got to see how people lived simply. You got to see how people suffered and struggled, and how that's made an impact on you. Maybe a little different from our trip to France, but definitely getting to see even different parts of France and the different parts of the country. Like we were in areas where there's like this amazing castle in Chantilly that we were walking through the gardens. And then there was also parts of the neighborhood when we were going to the metro that maybe weren't so, grandiose. And it was just regular people, and there were homeless, and there was different garbage in the street. So we got to see sort of the full gamut when we were in France. I know that travel, in fact, is so important to you that you chose your college according to one that had some great study abroad programs. And that was really important as you were going through the college selection process. So, talk a little bit about maybe your aspirations to travel in the future and why that was something important as you were choosing college.
Well, I love travel, and my junior year of high school, I got the opportunity to go to Europe. We went to Paris and London, and so after that trip, I just like fell more in love with travel. And when I was going through the process of figuring out what college I wanted to go to, one of the main things on my list to look for was, do they have a study abroad program? Where do they go? Like, how does that work? And I ended up choosing Point Loma Nazarene University, which is in San Diego, California. And I just really liked their study abroad program. They had some of the cities and places that I wanted to go. They had those opportunities that I could take in my later years of college, which I really hope to do.
That's amazing. And I love how your love for cultures of the world and seeing God at work in different parts of the world and your love for travel has just blossomed. She's also like the boss lady when it comes to packing. So we could do another episode on packing for international or long trips, and Melanie could definitely lead the conversation on that. But you also are a reader. You love to read, and part of our show is about books that help us enjoy and explore different cultures. Do you think your reading adventures have also helped you to fall in love with travel?
Yes, definitely. Like, I love reading a good book and like being transported to another world or time period or something like that. And so being able to do that in the real world by like taking a plane to another country or, visiting a neighboring city, like, is a really cool experience that is like the closest I'll get to like a fantasy world or something like that.
Yeah, you like to read a lot of fantasy books, but some that are historical as well. And like she said, she's going to be studying history. And so, do you have a dream job that you're thinking about?
I hope to work in a museum, maybe be like a museum curator and like just be able to teach other people about history in a museum setting and things like that. Because I think history is really important for people to learn and understand. And it's not just like it's boring, it's in the past, we don't need to worry about it. So I think everyone should learn and appreciate history.
Well, we'll see what God has for your future. I love that aspiration. I think as we just close our conversation, Sean, I want to go back to you and just thinking about this idea of being a global glory chaser, and that as a global glory chaser, we're not chasing after our own glory or the glory of other countries as much as we're really looking for God's glory in the world. And I wonder if there's any way that you experienced God's glory when you were on this recent trip to Paris.
That's a great question. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I think we've discussed is just being in the Stade de France, which is the track and field stadium that was used for the Olympics. I mean, it did have such an international flavor. There were so many people from the Netherlands showed up in force. Now, the Netherlands are known for wearing orange, for having orange uniforms, and all their fans turn up in orange tops, bottoms, hats. You can tell exactly where they're located throughout the stadium. There are huge blocks of them, from saw people from Spain and Germany and Ireland, and a huge contingent from the UK, as well as people, also representing, countries all over the world, because it is the Olympics. It's, it is the most global event that I can think of in any area of life, whether it's sports or business or you name it. I mean, it has as many countries as, I think, even more countries than the UN, probably. So it is definitely a global event. And just being in that stadium, just thinking about how we are just celebrating the athletic pursuits and the athletic talents that God has blessed these runners and jumpers and throwers with. It just reminds me of that passage in Revelation 7 in the Bible, which talks about how just a whole, horde of folks from every, tribe and nation will be worshiping God. In this scenario, I wouldn't necessarily, we're worshiping those who are competing, but we're celebrating them. Regardless which country wins the gold medal, of course, we're a little bit more joyful if the U.S. wins. But, if Great Britain wins or the French win or, a Kenyan athlete wins, we're celebrating their accomplishment because of their great talent that God has blessed them with.
It's funny because I had that same vision or sort of connection that came to mind to the passage in Revelation chapter 7. And Sean had that as well. I think I'm going to land here. Let's read that passage just for a little bit of context. In Revelation 7, it's verses 9 through 10. This is John, and he's describing a scene where this great multitude is gathering to worship the Lamb. Even though, again, like Sean said, that's not exactly what we are experiencing. I felt like it was just a whisper of what's to come and this vision that John is laying out in these couple of verses. And I'm reading it in the Message translation. It says, I looked again. I saw a huge crowd, too huge to count. Everyone was there, all nations and tribes, all races and languages. And they were standing, dressed in white robes and waving palm branches, standing before the throne and the Lamb, and heartily singing, salvation to our God on his throne, salvation to the Lamb. And so here we are in the Stade de France. And I mean, for me, that was probably the biggest crowd I've ever been a part of, 80,000 people that were cheering for the track and field events. But it was also just a reminder to me that we can anticipate this day together when we are going to join hands and hearts and voices in the grandest stadium, much grander than Stade de France, and give glory to God together with them, as John describes in this vision. So thank you so much, John and Melanie, for humoring and for coming on the podcast. We're kicking off our new season. Had to talk about Paris and the Olympics. We have lots of episodes that are coming up that we're going to be talking about different countries and cultures of the world. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, friends, for tuning in. I want to read a short excerpt from one of my favorite travel memoir books. It's called At Home in the World by Tish Oxenreider. And she writes this fun memoir of taking her children around the world to all these different countries to get to explore with her family. And it was one of those reads that I just absolutely loved. I got to sit down and just enter into all of these worlds with Tish. And since our theme for tonight is to explore France, as we were sharing about the Paris Olympics, I thought this little excerpt from her book would be kind of fun to share. It's at the end of the chapter on France, and it says this: the French are known for their sensuality, but tonight we pay for our roast duck and asparagus pizza. We walk to our car parked under Loire-Marin's fog through mistral winds, and I think of that conversation last week with Ryan and Stephanie. I think of people who think we're crazy for traveling the world with a gaggle of kids. I think of our long talk in that Thai neighborhood. The French writer Antoine de Saint-Exupéry once said, love doesn't mean gazing at each other, but looking together in the same direction. Kyle stops me before he unlocks the car and he kisses me, newlywed style, under a lamppost on a foggy night in Provence. So that's just a little taste of this writing from At Home in the World by Tish Oxenreider, if you want to check out that book. And I want to give you 3 GGC, Global Glory Chasers, recommendations today that are related to our recent trip to Europe, specifically to France and Paris. And the first is Viator. So they are not sponsors, but I just absolutely love this service. It's a website, viator.com. They have 24/7 customer support. You can search excursions, adventures. We took our cooking class from Paris through this site, and they include millions of reviews. And so it's really nice for travelers because you can kind of see, oh, this is what other families really enjoyed. So I highly recommend using Viator if you're going to a new place, a new city, a new country that you haven't been before. I absolutely love the cooking classes. They have walking tours, they have bicycle tours. These are fun ways to explore a place with the aid of a local. And so, like, we had a local Parisian chef who invited us into his home, and then we got to cook together, as we talked about in our interview a little bit earlier. So, Viator, it is awesome. And I highly recommend that one. My second recommendation is actually for some fun gear that we discovered and used on our recent trip to France. So, this is my new favorite carry on. It's called the Core Surf carry-on backpack. And what I loved about this is that it fits like a backpack, so it hooks over your shoulders like a normal backpack. It has a really strong waist buckle, and so that could help distribute the weight, especially for me. I have some lower back issues, and so this was really helpful. And then the inside is built kind of like a suitcase with all these different little compartments. If you use the packing cubes, it's kind of like having built-in packing cubes because there's mesh and there's different zipper mesh compartments. There's a place that I could put my laptop if I wanted to bring that. I didn't bring it on my trip to France. But what I loved about this is that we got them for the kids and me, and we were able to carry them. You know, when you're walking on cobblestone streets or you're kind of going through the airport and it's hard to have one of those rolly bags. So this is something that I found on Amazon. I'll drop the link in the show notes for you as well. But the Core Surf carry-on backpack is my new favorite. And my third recommendation is a site that hopefully some of you have already discovered. It's called Airbnb. Airbnb, they do vacation rentals, they have cabins, they have beach houses, they have homes. And we used Airbnb when we were in France. This was a great way to save money. And especially when you're in Europe, where a lot of the hotel rooms are really small. We're a family of 5. And so we would have had to get 3 hotel rooms in most of the hotels. And instead, we were able to rent a small apartment and then a home that was out near the Stade de France, where we were actually going to the Olympic Games. And we got the experience of living in a neighborhood, and I highly recommend using Airbnb if you don't already know about it. Friends, thank you for joining us for Season 5, Episode 1 of the Global Glory Chasers podcast, which is possible and ad-free because of the generous support that is given through Substack. So you can sign up for my free weekly Glorygram, which I include some of these fun recommendations. I always include a story from our lives chasing God's glory. And you can also become a paid subscriber, which helps to support our podcast and keep it ad-free. All you have to do is go over to dorinaglorygram.substack.com, and we will put that link again in the show notes. We will be right back here next Wednesday to drop our next episode of Global Glory Chasers. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation with award-winning children's author Mitali Perkins. Friends, let's chase his glory together.